What if I told you ancient Chinese farmers were growing vegetables that could solve our modern food crisis? Centuries ago, Chinese gardens held 15 incredible vegetables that fed dynasties and healed emperors. These plants survived droughts, grew in terrible soil, and packed more nutrition than anything in your local supermarket. Yet somehow, we completely forgot about them. Today, we're uncovering what we've been missing. And trust me, after hearing about these lost superfoods, you'll wonder how we ever let them disappear. Starting with number 15, imagine spinach that grows in water and tastes like asparagus had a baby with regular spinach. Meet Chinese mallow, or kui as farmers called it. This was the overachiever of the vegetable world, basically running its own survival business before anyone coined the term multitasking. Ancient texts from the Huangdi Neijing list it among the 5 nourishing herbs, which is basically like being in the Vegetable Hall of Fame. Poor households grew it when grain ran short because this plant didn't care about your terrible soil or lack of water. It just kept producing. The young leaves taste like mild lettuce, perfect for salads if you're into that raw food life. But here's where it gets interesting. Cook the older leaves and they turn into this thick, mucilaginous texture that's like nature's cornstarch. Wei and Jin dynasty courts couldn't get enough of this stuff. They'd throw it in soups, stews, basically anything that needed thickening. And get this, it has more calcium than kale, grows in 45 days flat, and needs way less fertilizer than modern lettuce. One study showed it absorbs way less nitrate than regular lettuce, which means less chemical runoff into water systems. So naturally we stopped growing it. Because why have a drought-tolerant superfood when you can struggle with needy vegetables that demand constant attention? Archaeologists keep finding carbonized mallow seeds from over 2,500 years ago, and these seeds are everywhere in ancient sites. That tells you something, right? When everyone's growing the same plant for millennia, maybe they knew something we don't. By the Ming Dynasty, some monk named Wang Zhen was already complaining that only religious communities kept the seeds. Even back then, people were abandoning good sense for trendy new crops. Number 14 brings us to the vegetable kingdom's master of disguise. These pearly white segmented rhizomes look exactly like albino caterpillars, which should have been marketing suicide, but ancient Chinese farmers didn't care about Instagram appeal. Chinese artichoke, or di sun, was showing up on Tang Dynasty banquet tables, while European farmers were still figuring out turnips. If vegetables had Halloween costumes, this would win every year, hands down. The thing about Chinese artichokes is they grow on absolute garbage soil. Clay that would make other plants pack up and leave? Chinese artichoke loves it. Not only does it grow there, it actually improves the calcium content in your dirt while producing up to 9 tons per hectare of crunchy tubers. They taste like someone crossed an artichoke with a water chestnut and added this subtle nuttiness that makes you keep reaching for more. The texture's incredible too, stays crispy even after cooking, which is probably why fancy restaurants charge stupid money for them now. But here's the real kicker that shows how advanced ancient Chinese society was. During the Song Dynasty, tax collectors would accept these weird-looking tubers as payment instead of cash. That's right, you could literally pay your taxes with ugly vegetables. Try doing that with your kale at the IRS office. See how that goes. The French finally discovered these things in the 1880s and went absolutely nuts for them, calling them krusnas. Meanwhile, Chinese farmers had been growing them for over 1,000 years already. Modern breeders at Shanxi Agricultural University just developed rot-resistant varieties, solving the one problem that held them back. Plus, farmers figured out you can grow them between apple trees, turning dead orchard space into winter cash. It's like finding money growing in your backyard. For number 13, we need to talk about a vegetable so hardcore it comes with built-in armor. Gorgon nut, or qianxi, grows on floating pads covered in spines that would make a porcupine jealous. Neolithic kitchen trash heaps are absolutely full of these seeds, meaning people have been dealing with this prickly nightmare for thousands of years because the payoff was worth it. During the Warring States era, farmers created entire raft fields on Jiangsu lakes. basically turning water into farmland. Imagine this. You're walking through the ancient China, and you see these massive floating gardens covered in spiky death traps. That's Gorgon nut cultivation. The farmers would pull out in boats, wearing thick gloves, harvesting seeds from plants that looked like they escaped from Jurassic Park. The seeds can be popped like corn, and I mean exactly like corn. They puff up and get this nutty, crunchy texture. Or you can grind them into flour that makes killer gluten-free bread. These things fed entire villages through monsoon disasters when rice fields flooded. Think about that for a second. While your ancestors were starving during floods, Chinese farmers were literally harvesting food from the flood itself. The plant tolerates brackish water that would kill rice, sequesters twice as much carbon as rice paddies, and the seeds pack 14% protein with a low glycemic index that won't spike your blood sugar. But we abandoned it because peeling spiny pods takes effort, and apparently we'd rather have diabetes than do a little work. Modern decorticating machines from Anhui cut processing time by 70%, so that excuse is totally gone. Some health food stores sell popped Gorgon nuts for like $20 a pound now. Time to bring back the dragon of the vegetable world. Number 12 was so beloved that Su Dongpo wrote actual poetry about it. That's like Drake dropping a song about Brussels sprouts, except water shield soup was actually worth the hype. Chunkai grows these silky, jelly-coated leaves that Westlake farmers would skim at dawn, creating what was basically nature's premium ingredient. You had to harvest them at sunrise when the mucilage coating was thickest, which meant farmers were out there in the dark with lanterns, scooping up these slippery leaves like aquatic gold miners. Ming Dynasty surveys logged 1,200 hectares of managed water shield ponds. Today, less than 30 hectares remain around Hangzhou. The texture is unlike anything else. Imagine if someone crossed Jell-O with spinach but made it taste good. When you bite into fresh water shield, there's this pop as you break through the gel coating. Then you get this mild, slightly sweet green flavor. It's addictive in the weirdest way. The plant produces natural anti-algal compounds, making it perfect for integrated farming systems where you're growing fish and vegetables together. Each hectare yields 6 tons of shoot tips loaded with polyphenols, those antioxidants everyone's obsessed with. Zhejiang cooperatives now export vacuum-packed buds to Tokyo for $9 per kilogram, and Japanese restaurants treat it like truffle-level precious. We nearly let this disappear because someone decided it was old people food. Meanwhile, those old people were eating anti-aging compounds while we munch on iceberg lettuce like we hate ourselves. Coming in at number 11, here's a vegetable that turned disaster into opportunity like a botanical entrepreneur. Manchurian wild rice stem was supposed to be a grain crop until a fungus called Ustilago esculenta crashed the party. But instead of giving up, Han Dynasty farmers said, okay, plot twist, and started cultivating the infected stems that swelled into something they called water bamboo. It's like if your wheat got a disease that turned it into asparagus, and you just rolled with it. The Tang government loved this innovation so much, they made the infected stems tax-exempt. That's right, ancient Chinese tax policy was more creative than anything we've come up with. They literally incentivized farmers to grow diseased plants because the result was so valuable. The fungus makes the stems swell up into these juicy, crisp shoots that taste somewhere between bamboo and corn. Raw, they're sweet and crunchy. Cooked, they absorb flavors like nobody's business while keeping that satisfying bite. The fungus-grass duo tolerates water too cold for regular rice, has twice the dietary fiber of asparagus, and contains unique lignans that actually strengthen bones. Each stem delivers this amazing crisp texture, perfect for stir-fries, plus they store well without refrigeration. But when mechanized rice farming arrived in the 1950s, we decided efficiency was more important than diversity. Now climate change is making those northern rice paddies unreliable, and suddenly this cold-tolerant crop looks like the genius agricultural insurance the Chinese ancestors left us. Some farmers in northeast China started growing it again, and they're making bank selling to restaurants that remember what real food tastes like. Number 10 brings us to a vegetable so optimistic it became a New Year symbol. Arrowheadtuber, or saigu, literally meant to shoot a new sun, which was ancient China's way of saying this plant multiplies like it's running a pyramid scheme. The tubers taste exactly like chestnuts, that same sweet, starchy flavor that makes you think of fall, except these grow underwater in nasty clay where potatoes would drown and die. During New Year celebrations, every family had to have a saigu on the table. Not having it was like not having a Christmas tree in December. It just wasn't done. The plant spreads through runners under the mud, and each runner produces multiple tubers. One plant becomes 20. 20 become 400. It's exponential food production that would make tech bros jealous. They show up in 5th century medical texts and spread from tropical Guangdong to frozen Manchuria because they simply worked everywhere. The really clever bit is that the plant only flowers above 22 degrees Celsius, so northern farmers can grow seedless strains that break rice pest cycles. No flowers means no seeds means pests can't complete their life cycle. It's biological warfare through temperature control. The starch in these tubers resists digestion better than potato starch, giving it a low glycemic index perfect for diabetic diets. Fresh tubers now sell for $6 per kilogram in Shanghai hot pot restaurants, and people line up for them. Yet we nearly let this disappear because urban diners called it peasant food in the 1960s. Those peasants were eating gourmet healthy food while city folks got diabetes from white rice. The irony hurts. Number 9 takes us on a journey down the Silk Road because Chinese farmers were exporting vegetables before it was cool. Skirit, or Gansun, impressed Roman writers so much that Pliny wouldn't shut up about its sweetness. This guy wrote entire chapters about how amazing the Chinese skirit was. Song dynasty texts listed among the 8 noble roots, which is basically like having a Michelin star for vegetables. Then potatoes showed up from South America, and everyone forgot about this multi-rooted marvel that thrives in cool highlands where sweet potatoes get viral wilt and die. Each skirit root tastes like a parsnip went to candy school and graduated with honors. We're talking triple the sucrose of regular roots, but it's a complex sweetness, not that one-note sugar bomb thing. When you roast them, they caramelize into these crispy sweet strips that would make French fries jealous. Yunnan trials show it produces 18% more biomass than carrots while using less water. In drought conditions, skirit just shrugs and keeps growing while other roots shrivel up. Here's the really wild part. One plant divides into 20 offspring. If you plant one crown, you get 20 new plants. Those 20 become 400. It's basically the sourdough starter of root vegetables, a gift that keeps giving forever. Medieval European nobles paid stupid money to import this from China. Then we all collectively decided potatoes were better because they're easier to mass produce. Never mind that potatoes need new seeds every year, get 47 different diseases, and turn toxic if they see sunlight. We chose convenience over quality and sustainability. Make it make sense. For number 8, let's talk about a vegetable that mines minerals like it has a PhD in geology. Burdock root, or NEU bang, saved entire villages during Yellow River floods because Han Dynasty farmers knew how to ferment and store these meter-long roots. We're not talking little baby carrots here. Burdock roots go down 3 feet or more, drilling through soil layers like they're searching for oil. When the Yellow River flooded, which happened literally all the time, farmers would quickly harvest burdock, slice it, ferment it with salt, and pack it in jars. This stuff would last years and had enough nutrition to keep families alive when everything else was underwater. Modern Japanese cuisine treats it like royalty, calling it gobo, charging premium prices for what Chinese farmers considered emergency food. But China invented this game 2,000 years ago and then basically rage quit when synthetic fertilizers arrived. The taproot drills down through compacted soil, breaking up hardpan and pulling up calcium and minerals from deep layers. It's basically free soil renovation. Plus, it stores inulin, that prebiotic fiber that feeds beneficial gut bacteria. Recent studies tagged it as a symbiotic when paired with bifidobacterium cultures. That's science speak for it makes your gut bacteria throw a party. Climate-smart farmers discovered that planting burdock after barley locks 1.2 tons of carbon per hectare into deep soil where it stays put. Chefs now use the peels to make plant-based bacon chips that sell for absolutely ridiculous prices at farmers' markets. We literally walked away from a carbon-sequestering, gut-healing, bacon-flavored superfood because it has deep roots that are hard to harvest with machines. The stupidity is honestly breathtaking. Number 7 introduces us to the medieval meal replacement bar, except it grew on a plant. Solomon's seal rhizome, or huangjing, saved so many people during famines that historical records read like 5-star Amazon reviews. Eastern Jin Dynasty annals are full of stories about villagers digging these rhizomes to survive when crops failed. One account describes an entire county living on huangjing for 3 months straight during a drought. The process was insane, but it worked. Farmers would dig up these thick, knobby rhizomes that looked like ginger's ugly cousin. Then they'd slice them thin and steam them. Not once, not twice, but 9 separate times. Each steaming converted more starch into sweet, digestible sugars. After the 9th steaming, they'd dry them into these chewy raisins that lasted literally years without refrigeration. They're 35% resistant starch, which means they feed your gut bacteria while giving you steady energy. No sugar crashes, no hunger pangs, just sustained fuel. Guizhou University trials show you can grow 4.5 tons per hectare in forest shade. Think about that. You can grow food under trees where nothing else will grow. It's literally turning darkness into calories. The rhizomes taste like mild molasses with this earthy sweetness that grows on you. They have the perfect glycemic load for endurance athletes, better than any engineered sports gel. 15 different species grew across China, each adapted to local conditions. But medicine companies over-harvested wild populations for extracts, and nobody bothered replanting. So instead of farming this proven survival food, we're destroying the last wild sources while importing processed energy bars from halfway around the world. It's like burning your parachute while falling just to watch the pretty flames. Number 6 brings us to the iron heavyweight champion of vegetables. Vegetable fern, or juikai, fed Han frontier troops with fiddleheads containing 5 times more iron than spinach. That's 25 milligrams per 100 grams, making Popeye look like he was eating the wrong green. These aren't your decorative house ferns either. This is a serious food crop that happens to look like something from the dinosaur era. Frontier soldiers would forage these in spring when the fiddleheads were just unfurling. That's the key. You got to catch them at the right stage, or they get tough and bitter. Sun Simiao's 7th century recipes recommended blanching to remove cold, damp humor, which was ancient speak. For these things will mess up your stomach if you eat them raw. He suggested a quick boil, then stir-frying with ginger and garlic to balance the cold nature of the fern. The fern loves monsoon heat that makes lettuce bolt faster than Usain. When your lettuce is turning bitter and going to seed in July humidity, vegetable ferns are just getting started. They propagate from spores or rhizome division and fit perfectly into rice duck systems where the ducks eat pests and fertilize the water. Wild forage fiddleheads now sell for $14 per kilogram on Chinese e-commerce platforms, and fancy restaurants charge triple that. Yet we almost let this iron powerhouse vanish because refrigeration made year-round lettuce possible. We literally chose anemia over eating a vegetable that prevents it. Smart move, humans. Landing at number 5. Here's a vegetable that high-altitude Tibetan herders eat raw like candy when they get altitude headaches. Hooker chive, or Kwan Yeju, makes your garden variety chive look like a weakling. This mountain garlic thrives in waterlogged soil that would rot normal alliums, grows on depleted slopes where nothing else will, and packs twice the antimicrobial compounds of regular garlic. The thing about hooker chive is it doesn't play by normal plant rules. Most alliums hate wet feet, This one loves it. Most need decent soil. This one prefers exhausted dirt. The leaves are wider and fleshier than normal chives, with this intense garlic onion flavor that'll clear your sinuses faster than wasabi. But they bruise super easily, turning brown if you look at them wrong, which apparently was enough for modern supply chains to completely ghost this superfood. Biochemical screens found compounds called organosulfides at levels that could replace antibiotics in livestock feed. That's huge when you consider antibiotic resistance is basically the apocalypse in slow motion. Farmers can harvest leaves every 25 days without replanting. Just cut and come again forever. It's like having a garlic factory in your backyard that never needs new machinery. Gourmet shops in Kathmandu sell cold-pressed oil from the bulbs at prices that would make olive oil blush. Some innovative farmers in Yunnan started growing it between tea bushes, and the natural pest repellent properties keep aphids off the tea. But sure, let's keep growing regular chives that need babying and do basically nothing special. Number 4 introduces a vegetable that worked as its own pesticide before humans invented the word pesticide. Waterdropper, or shui qin, grew along rice paddy edges since the Zhou dynasty, which is like 3,000 years ago if you're counting. This plant releases natural coumarin compounds that literally fumigate pest snails out of existence. It was multitasking before Silicon Valley made it annoying. Spring festival meals always included it because the stems have this bright celery meets parsley flavor that cuts through heavy winter foods. But here's the genius part. While it's flavoring your dinner, it's also stabilizing the field edges with its spreading stolon network. Each plant sends out these horizontal stems that root at nodes, creating this living fence that prevents erosion. 20 tons of edible stems per hectare while protecting your fields. That's called working smarter, not harder. Climate models predict wetter springs across the Yangtze Valley, exactly where traditional rice regions are. More rain means more erosion unless you have dropwort's root network holding everything together. The leaves contain natural blood-thinning compounds similar to warfarin, but gentler. Nanjing breweries just started making dropwort ale, using it as a botanical bitter that adds this unique green, slightly spicy note. Beer that's literally good for you. We sidelined this beneficial companion plant for chemical herbicides that poison everything, including us. Then we act surprised when our fields have pest explosions and our waterways turn toxic. Number 3 served as ancient China's MSG before anyone knew what umami was. Daylily buds, or huanghua kai, shipped by the hundreds of tons down the Grand Canal during the Song dynasty. Every pantry from peasant huts to palace kitchens stocked these golden needles because they made everything taste better. It wasn't just seasoning, it was literal food security in dried form. Fresh daylily buds are slightly toxic, containing colchicine that'll give you a bad time. But Chinese cooks figured out the hack thousands of years ago. Just parboil them for 2 minutes and all the bad stuff goes away, leaving pure umami gold. The dried buds rehydrate into these tender, slightly chewy strips that add depth to any soup or stir-fry. But when people moved to cities and lost grandma's cooking knowledge, sales crashed harder than crypto in a bear market. The real tragedy is that this drought-resistant perennial blooms productively for 25 years straight. One planting when your kid is born keeps producing until they graduate college. It sequesters carbon the entire time, prevents erosion with its root mass, and looks gorgeous with those orange blooms. The petals contain 3 times more beta-carotene than carrots, and the texture, when battered and fried, makes perfect plant-based calamari that'll fool your seafood-loving friends. Yunnan's Lancang County just certified 3,300 hectares of organic daylily operations. They're supplying vegan meat companies with concentrated umami extracts that replace MSG and yeast extracts. Natural, sustainable, and grown on marginal land that won't support other crops. One planting feeds families for literal decades, yet we nearly let it disappear. Because people forgot you need to cook it first. That's like abandoning cars because someone forgot to mention the gas pedal. pure smooth brain energy. Number 2 gives us a vegetable so pretty it earned the name phoenix tail. And unlike most pretty things, this one actually has substance. Purple Ginura, or Hongfeng Kai, kept Hakka charcoal burners alive when they were basically living rough in the mountains. These folks were burning charcoal in the middle of nowhere, eating whatever grew wild, and they discovered this purple-green plant that tasted good and kept them healthy. The leaves are gorgeous, deep purple underneath and emerald green on top, like nature's mood ring. The purple comes from anthocyanins, the same compounds that make blueberries a superfood, except Gynura has way more. When cabbage arrived from Europe, everyone decided boring was better and pushed Gynura to the medicine garden corner. Because apparently we hate beautiful things that are also good for us. Lab tests confirm it's loaded with chlorogenic acids, the compounds that make green coffee extract a weight loss supplement, plus those anthocyanins that put blueberries to shame. But here's the best part. The plant roots from cuttings in 10 days. Literally just stick a stem in dirt and boom, new plant. It yields 18 tons per hectare without trying and naturally repels insects because the leaves are covered in these tiny hairs that bugs hate. No pesticides needed ever. Vertical farms in Ningbo started growing it as salmon pink microgreens for fancy restaurants. They charge $40 a pound for baby Gynura leaves that taste like mild spinach with a hint of mushroom. We had a pest-resistant, anti-diabetic, absolutely gorgeous vegetable that grows like a weed, and we traded it for boring-ass cabbage. If that doesn't sum up human decision-making, I don't know what does. Finally, number 1 brings us to a root so valuable that soldiers survived on it, monks meditated on it, and farmers paid taxes with it. Balloonflower root, or Ji Geng, shows up in Shennong's medicine guide from the 2nd century as lung-unbinding food. That's ancient speak, for this will save your respiratory system. Ming soldiers stationed in frozen Manchuria beat scurvy with these vitamin-packed roots, while European sailors were still dying from it centuries later. The flower itself is stunning, these deep blue, purple blooms that puff up like balloons before opening, hence the name. But underground is where the magic happens. The roots look like pale carrots, but taste completely different. Kind of bitter at first, then sweet, with this weird numbing quality that's actually breaking down mucus in your system. Koreans still eat tons of this stuff, calling it doraji, while Chinese kitchens mostly forgot about it. Modern analysis found 75 different saponin compounds that fight obesity, lower cholesterol, and help regulate blood sugar. It's basically a pharmacy growing in root form. The plant thrives on acidic red soils where soybeans would just give up and die. It matures in 18 months and sells for $8 per kilogram dried, which is serious money for a crop that needs 0 inputs. Recent fertilizer trials in Jilin doubled the root size just by adding some slow-release organic matter. Stir-fried balloonflower with chili oil is trending on Douyin because young people are rediscovering what their great-grandparents knew. This wasn't just food or medicine, it was both, plus a cash crop. Plus it looked beautiful in the garden. It prevented respiratory infections, cleared your lungs if you got sick, and tasted good enough to eat regularly. We had a gorgeous flowering plant that paid your taxes and kept you healthy, and we abandoned it for vegetables that do neither. These 15 vegetables represent everything wrong with how we think about food today. Ancient Chinese farmers developed this incredible diversity over thousands of years of careful observation and selection. They grew food in floods, on mountains, in terrible soil, during droughts, in freezing winters. They had vegetables that prevented specific illnesses, improved their soil, fed their animals, and looked beautiful doing it. Each plant was chosen for multiple benefits, not just yield. Then we came along with our modern wisdom and decided, nah, let's just grow 5 things and spray them with chemicals. We took 15 different nutrition sources and replaced them with iceberg lettuce and imported tomatoes. We abandoned drought-resistant plants right before climate change made droughts worse. We stopped growing flood-resistant crops just in time for increased flooding. It's like we had a crystal ball showing us the future and decided to do the exact opposite of what made sense. The good news? These plants still exist. Seeds are tucked away in research stations, growing wild in mountain villages, carefully maintained by stubborn farmers who remember. Chinese seed companies are starting to produce them again. Young farmers who are sick of chemical-dependent monocultures are experimenting with heritage varieties. Food forests are incorporating perennial vegetables like huangjing and daylilies. Urban vertical farms are growing Gura and water shield for high-end restaurants. Looking at this list, one thing becomes crystal clear. The ancestors of the Chinese were agricultural geniuses, and we might be the dumbest generation in farming history. But here's the thing. Stupid can be fixed. We can bring these vegetables back. We can grow food that doesn't need constant chemical life support. We can eat vegetables that actually taste good and prevent disease instead of causing it. The knowledge exists. The seeds exist. The growing techniques exist. All we need to do is stop being idiots and use them. Your great-great-grandparents are watching, and trust me, they're not impressed with our iceberg lettuce. Time to make them proud again.